Well, that's awesome. Seth, welcome to Kicking Tables. It's so great to have you on here. I am excited for this game. It is out now. Murder, H. Holmes Murder Castle. I am fascinated with this subject matter. Actually, when you first presented the game, I'm like, I know that story. I love that story. But for those who don't know the game, why don't you tell our viewers what the game is all about?
Yeah, so in our game, you're traveling back to Chicago in 1893 during the World's Fair. And the celebration it showcased different technology, art, music. It had the very first Ferris wheel. But looming in the background was an insurance swindling con artist that used fraudulent money to construct a hotel for the purpose of the World's Fair. And so that's where our game takes place. The hotel was constructed to deceive and torture unsuspecting victims that were there to travel to the World's Fair. The hotel had rooms to brick walls and trapdoors and grease chutes to the basement. You got rooms with gas fixtures. So as a gamer, that's exactly what we decided to pursue because we thought it would be pretty interesting to explore that.
And so, what is the actual game? Give an idea of how the game plays out.
Yeah, so essentially everyone starts at the pharmacy. The format of the game in terms of the room tiles starts very similar to Betrayal.
Okay.
But what's different about our game is that there's different action tiles that utilizes like a San Juan Puerto Rico style gameplay
Okay.
that allows everyone to select action tiles, stay engaged, not take too long of turns between actions. And then you're essentially exploring the castle. There are 30 different types of room tiles that create different pathways. So every time you play the game, it's going to be completely different. Homes will pop up at different times, forcing you to drop evidence as you're trying to collect it. And then you're also, because the game's competitive, you're playing against other backstabbing guests and through event cards. So it sort of has a feel of a little bit of a Kings of Tokyo from that perspective, a little
Nice.
bit of a Colt Express in terms of trying to grab stuff and dropping it.
Yeah, that is what attracted me to this game in the first place. Is one of my, I'd say, one of my favorite mechanics in a game is the tile laying, is the building the board as you play. Like you mentioned Betrayal, one of my all-time favorite games. I just love, you take a turn. If you enter a room that's not there, you put a room tile in. I love those kind of games. And so that's what really attracted me to Murder Castle to begin with, other than the content itself, which I'm
Yeah.
fascinated in.
Yeah, no, the content is fabulous. I absolutely love, this story as well. I think one of my favorite seasons of American Horror Story was The Hotel, which was also based off of this story. I'm wondering, what was it that drew you guys to make the game for this? What was the inspiration to actually, like, obviously you love the story, but like, why this into a game? How did that sort of come about?
Yeah, good question. So some of us, some of my friend group, we had been toying around with the idea of creating a game several times, got pretty far on one, and when we were about to start moving down the direction, we found a similar game in Target.
Oh
So we
no.
we nixed that idea. So long behold, years later, I was moving to Chicago, and a friend told me to read Devil in the White City because they knew I liked architecture. I had no idea I was going to be reading a book about a serial killer, but the book was fantastic. I'm honestly, I'm not much of a book reader. Like, I play video games, I play board games and movies, but I read that book in 2 days, and I was
Wow.
just fascinated with the architecture and the World Fair and the chase, and what Holmes, the type of person he was, and how it was very different because back in those days, the serial killer persona didn't take on someone that was attractive and charismatic and a good people person. So it was a little bit different at that time. And I read the book and I thought, oh man, this would make an absolutely killer board game. And in our friend group, we love large player counts for board games, and I've just never thought that there's enough of those. And some of the larger player counts in board games, they're quicker turns, so they're not you don't have as much strategy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we kind of wanted to take the theme with that idea have a lot of high replayability, but really keep the game fun at its core and a lot of player-to-player interaction.
That's awesome. Now I notice it has basically a main title called Crimes in History. Is there an intent to have more games in that? Is this? Do you want this to be a series? Are we going to see other Crimes in History games?
So we left that in as a possibility during
Okay.
as you all probably know, when you start creating a game, you there's a flood of additional ideas, and you start documenting all of those down, and you
Yeah.
pursue what works. Um, we left that open. We were going to pursue a different game idea and ran into a pretty big roadblock. And so I'm happy to announce that we are working on our second game. It will continue the Crimes in History
Awesome.
series, but it
Oh,
will not
fantastic.
be a crime of murder. It'll be a different crime.
Well, whatever that is, we'll have you back on the show to talk about that when you're ready to talk about it. So that's
Awesome.
awesome. Crimes. I like that. That's great.
Yeah. So I'm curious with your room tiles, how many of the room tiles are fashioned as that closely after the actual Myrtle rooms?
Yeah. So all but for the most part, I would say of the 30 different types, there are 3 that are definitely not, that we added in as part of the Kickstarter campaign as a higher option, higher reward.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a few that were not included in the printed newspaper at the time, but it makes sense, right? There's got to be a bathroom, there's got to be a kitchen. So we didn't go too far. We didn't stray too far from that newspaper, but we do have the maze, we have the dumbwaiter, we've got brick walls that kind of come out in a draw. So we took a lot of the fun aspects of the original blueprints.
Now, how much research did you have to do into this story and into the facts of the crimes in order to do this?
We did a lot more than we probably needed to, given the artist that we worked with, because she was amazing, Holly Carden. But before we knew we were going to partner with her, we spent significant amount of time researching it, because having a castle and exploring isn't enough for a game. You really need to develop a unique perspective of what's going to be unique about the game, or how are you going to integrate that across mechanics. And for us, the kind of blurb we read was that only Holmes ever knew the layout of the castle.
Right.
And
Okay.
that was really interesting, because we thought, okay, so everyone can kind of play this castle over and over. Holmes will pop up because he knows kind of the quickest routes, but that was kind of a cool idea to play with. But every time we got stuck, whether it was thematically or mechanically, we went back to the history in the story. We watched a ton of podcasts, read a ton of articles, looked for as much stuff as we could, and then in doing so, we found a Murder Castle puzzle that Holly Carden had done, which is like it's a really unique kind of like cutout view into the Murder Castle, and her illustrative style was cartoony,
Okay.
and we thought that was a really good artwork style to utilize for our first game, because we didn't want there to be too much gore, and we wanted
Right.
to kind of capitalize on the gameplay that we had in mind with that style.
You talk about mechanics a bit there, and so let's dive into what are the different mechanics in the game. And I'm curious, as you're developing it, which one was the hardest one to get right to actually make it feel good as you're playing?
Yeah. So in terms of the major mechanics, funny enough, the action tile selection came last after we
Okay.
attended Gen Con and got other game designer feedback, and we really needed to kind of improve the flow of the game. The rest of the mechanics had worked pretty well up to that. We took we took a similar feel from Kings of Tokyo for the event cards. I would say one of our hardest ones that we had to really play a lot of different games to try to draw inspiration. Actually came from Azul, and it was for our Ferris wheel. And
Okay.
how are we going to get how are we going to have strategic decisions where evidence will get placed into rooms as they're drawn and explored, and know what's coming up, and the ability to kind of affect that.
Right.
In looking at Azul, you kind of set up the different factories, and it almost looks visually like a Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
And we thought that would be a cool thing to bring into our game, given that the 1893 World's Fair featured the first Ferris wheel.
So did the game not start as a tile laying game then? Was it just going to be a board?
It always was a tile laying game. I think what we did with the tiles drastically changed from the start to end.
Okay, how did that change for you? What did it look like at the beginning versus what it is now?
Yeah, at the beginning we were trying to actually find different clues that
Okay.
you would check off on a box, very similar to Clue, and
Ah,
and it felt too similar to Clue. The mechanics were similar, and it's there wasn't a lot of depth to it, and so we had to kind of really step back and say, what type of game do we want to be? Do we, is this a memory game? Is this a deduction game? Is this a racing game and a battling game? And then we focused in on what we thought our game did the best.
okay, that's awesome.
So tell us a little bit. It's out at retail now. You've sent out to all of your backers. Is there expansion tiles or anything like that you guys are maybe working on? I know you're working on your next project, but are you possibly going to be adding anything to this version?
We might in the future. We were funded last year in February, and it was right before the pandemic happened, and there's a lot of pros and cons to that. One of the pros is that we got really good pricing right before costs significantly rose. And because of that pre-ordering phase, we had doubled our original Kickstarter. So we did like a 2,500 print run, which was a lot higher than what we had anticipated.
Yeah.
The downside of it is that our game is really, really expensive to produce, and we will likely not be able to produce anything in the future unless we were to at least equal that quantity, which means we'd have to introduce something significant
Right.
for all of those plus more to kind of come into the game.
Yeah.
So nothing at this time.
Can you tease your next project at all? Can you give us a hint of what crime we might be looking at, or is that completely secret now?
That's completely secret as of now. What I can say is it's going to be deduction and social deduction based, but there's going to be different elements there, and we have not seen a social deduction game have some of these mechanics yet. So if we can accomplish it, it'll hopefully blend a couple mechanics into a new type of game.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Why don't you touch a bit on what you're calling the second story, which is included in the game now? Why don't you touch on what that brings to the game versus the base game?
Yeah, so our base game is 2 to 6 players, and the expansion included version of the second story expands the game to 1 to 7 players, which incorporates an Automa solo mode with 3 different difficulties, and then it also includes a play as Holmes mode, which is a 1 versus many. And in the play as Holmes mode, I happen to have a Holmes control board here, which is what Holmes uses. We were actually inspired by Scythe on this a little bit, but we wanted to kind of simplify the idea. So Holmes gets to kind of place cubes into these different castle movement modifications or destruction of evidence or planting fake evidence, and gets to affect the game and all other players. Holmes's win scenario is he basically has to get 10 strikes across all players combined, while the win condition remains the same for the rest of the players.
That's cool.
So it sort of feels like a blend between Scythe and Pandemic Bioterrorist Role for those that are familiar with both of those.
You've got a real wonderful mashup of so many games in this. It's awesome. That is great to see all of these little mechanics pulled from different games and put into such a just a great game. That's awesome. You can tell you're a gamer. Like, you tell you at your core you are a gamer, and now you've made a game, and that is evident by all of the different references you've got in here, which is absolutely wonderful. Now we've started doing a new segment on the show called "It's Just a Lightning Round." I'm sure you understand what these are. Just real quick, I'm going to ask you real quick questions and just give us your first answer. It's all gaming related or game night related. Okay, it's all of these. So just think game night or gaming.
All right.
You ready for this?
Yep.
All right. It's just real quick. Here we go. Dice or cards?
Cards.
What's your favorite classic game?
Masterpiece.
Nice. Competitive or cooperative?
Competitive.
Campaign or legacy?
Legacy.
Nice. Purchasing games, local game store or online?
That's tough. Probably local game store.
Got to support the locals. What's the last game you played?
Oh, Back to the Future, Dice Through Time.
Oh, nice. Okay. What's your favorite modern game?
I know this is controversial, but Wingspan.
Okay, awesome. I know a lot of people love Wingspan. All right, your final one, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
All right. I would take either answer to those personally.
These days, it's pretty good movie universes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Movie and television now for both, really. All right. Before we let you go, Seth, it's been awesome talking to you, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to give us the elevator pitch for H.H. Holmes' Murder Castle. Why should people buy this game?
Yeah, so people should buy this game if you're looking for a lot of versatility in one box. It essentially can play one player. It scales to 2. It definitely hits its stride with 3 to 7 players. And I would say as you increase the player count, there's going to be more chaos in how the event cards interact with each other, and it's a lot of fun. No game will occur twice. I promise this because I've done over 500 playtests, and I still crave the game. So I'm not sick of it yet. So I think if folks play it, you'll definitely like it. We're rated a 7.8 on Boardgame Geek, and hope more people continue to rate that. And it's got incredible artwork from Holly Carden. Compared to any other game that has room tile designs, I promise ours has to be near the best because of the intricate details across each of the rooms that were inspired from the original castle blueprint. So our game is fun at its core. So if you're looking for a super strategic game like Terraforming Mars, and that might not be the right game, our game is truly kind of fun. So if you're looking to, bring new folks into the board game night, or you just kind of want to have a filler game between something heavier, definitely recommend this game.
Awesome. And where can we get the game right now?
So the game is available. We have a link on blueprintgamingconcepts.com that will take you to Cool Stuff Inc. And also on our website, we have a friendly FLGS locator tool. So if you're near one of the retailers that we're partnering with, we have over 32 locations worldwide.
Nice.
Most of those are in the U.S. and you can see if your neighborhood game store is on there.
All right, we will have that link right down below in the description. Everybody check that out. And you can look for our review of this game coming soon on our channel. With the lockdowns, it might be a little bit delayed, but we are working on it. Seth, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you about H.H. Holmes' Murder Castle. I'm excited to play it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone, for following along on the Crimes in History H.H. Holmes Murder Castle. If interested, visit www.blueprintgamingconcepts.com, and don't forget to subscribe at the link below.